Paul has a mountain journalism career that is just kind of without a match. He is one of the most prolific writers I've ever encountered.
For Paul to tackle this issue, housing in the valley. I mean, this is a gigantic topic.
His work is about increasing our sense of community, or as he puts it, our sense of home, which I love that expression. Because it is our home, and it is a unique place, and it is special, and it's worth fighting for and preserving, and not just letting it dissolve and becoming one more any ski resort anywhere in America.
And then the next book he does is poetry. What was the question?
So this is our family wall here, showing my youth and my family life. My great-grandparents, Soren and Christina Andersen, immigrants from Denmark, and my father and my son and me, Tate. And my father was an architect. He studied at the Illinois Institute of Technology, which was the new Bauhaus school, and Herbert Bayer would have been there when my father was there. My mother, Agnes Andersen, a musician who brought music into my life as a young person. My brother and sister and me, Norman and Jean. So this is just a snapshot, but you can see I was an avid fisherman for a while. We went camping when America went camping in the 60s, and we packed a family of 5 and 2 golden retrievers into a Rambler station wagon and saw the big national parks. When I saw the West from the windows of that car, I recognized something in me that I needed to be out there, and that's really what propelled me to come west. I first came to Aspen in the spring of 1966 as a skier on a family trip. I was 15, and one night I asked my family, I said, I'd really like to go out by myself for a dinner. And they said, well, all right, but where are you going to go? I said, well, I noticed this restaurant called Pinocchio's. My outfit was white slacks and a Madras shirt. And I sat at a table. I took the mustard bottle, and someone had booby-trapped it so that the top came off, and the whole contents ended up on my white slacks and my Madras shirt. I was totally humbled and ready to slink back to the condo and join the family. My grades were abysmal in high school. It was advised that I not even go on to higher education. I applied at Western State. They accepted me. So 1969, I graduated high school. And again, I was a dreadful student. 2 quarters later, I quit school. And that led to a 4-year hiatus in school. And I moved to Crested Butte in 1970. I wrote for the newspaper. I became the editor of the Crested Butte Chronicle. And it was like an incredible, playful experience for me. Mountain biking came of age when I was living there, and we rode every trail that you could ride. I went back to school finally at Western and graduated with a degree in English and a minor in history. Then I applied for a job at the Gunnison Country Times as a journalist, reporting on the AMAX mining proposal for Mount Emmons. The town prevailed. The mine pulled out in the early 80s, and that's when I shifted gears and decided to apply for a job at the Aspen Times. I got a phone call from Mary Hayes. She said, we've got a position opening in 2 weeks. Can you come in the next few days? And I said, I'll be there. So I had my touring bike and my panniers, and I rode over Reno Divide into Taylor Park. That night I sat on a boulder feeling like my life was about to change. The next day I loaded up, rolled down into Taylor Park, and then up Taylor Pass and dropped into Ashcroft. And here I stopped at the bridge on Castle Creek, took a quick bath just to spritz myself up, and rolled into Aspen. I show up at the Aspen Times where I have an interview with Bill Dunaway, the legend, and Mary Hayes. And I'll never forget, Bill Dunaway, he said, so how did you get here today from Crested Butte? I said, well, I rode my bicycle. And he perked up. He said, what? And I told him my route, and he hired me on the spot. That was all the credibility I needed for Built Dunaway. When I came to the Aspen Times, the senior reporters dumped their unwanted beats on me. So I inherited the Aspen Institute, the Aspen Center for Theoretical Physics, the Aspen Design Conference, and the Aspen Music Festival. I inherited the entire cultural campus of Aspen. What a gift! I mean, every day was a discovery for me, and I fell in love with Aspen. So I kept a little scrapbook of some of my earlier articles of the Aspen Times, but I also covered county politics and elections and that sort of thing. These features like Itzhak Perlman, I mean, one of the great classical musicians. Paradise Bakery, when the chips are down, talking about the chocolate chip addiction that I suffered. Greg Poshman, A Day in the Life of Aspen. And then the airport spurs conflict. These issues are predominant and it seems like they're eternal. This article, Body, Mind, and Spirit, at the Choices for the Future Symposium put on by John Denver and the WinStar Foundation. And this is where I began to pick up the Aspen idea, the nurturing of the whole person.
I'm Graham Means, and I've known Paul for, I think, 45 years when he first came over to Aspen from Crested Butte.
And Graham and I established an immediate simpatico because of our love of outdoor recreation, skiing and cycling. We try to be off-road as much as possible. These are expeditionary trips where we're carrying all our gear, front and rear bags.
We've traveled all over the Southwest and the country and even to Israel and Turkey on very remote backcountry bike tours.
Graham and I have had this relationship based on adventure and on really questing for new horizons and new ways of using the bicycle as a tool to get out into the remote outback. And that leads to explorations that take us to places that we would never go otherwise.
We've traveled quite a long distance and it's been an amazing journey.
Coming to Aspen, the foremost influence for me at that time was Bob Lewis. Bob Lewis, a 10th Mountain Division trooper, Hall of Famer, introduced my wife and me. Our lives revolved around the out of doors and wilderness and hiking, and that's another thing Bob Lewis inspired, was this incredible love of nature that has carried on and really defined what I do and led to founding an Aspen Institute seminar called Nature and Society. John Bennett was with the Institute where I proposed the Nature and Society seminar.
It was exciting to do something so unconventional, to take the classic Aspen Institute seminar format with academic readings and blow away the walls and do it up in the mountains, up in the wilderness.
That led to the founding of Huts for Vets, taking veterans into the wilderness to the 10th Mountain Hut System. Good morning. Here we are, Huts for Vets. So we're going intentionally into the woods here, and we're going to see if we can discover a new vitality for life. Colonel?
Yeah, this is Edward Abbey.
I approached two veterans in the valley, Colonel Dick Merritt and Dan Glidden. Once you get a philosophical discussion going with veterans, it takes off because they are the ultimate philosophers, having witnessed the brutality of human beings, having faced life, death, and the meaning of existence. And they needed to tell their stories. And I could see the change in these veterans in just 3 days. And by the time we walked back down to the trailhead, these men and women were changed, and they told me so. Through all these hut trips that I've led, a real joy for me has been partnering with my son Tate. He's been with me on these trips since the start, and he's been an unparalleled support, and I can depend on him. And that has led to a father-son relationship that has been incredibly gratifying to both of us. I ran the program for 10 years. And then Eric Villasenor, a veteran of both Afghanistan and Iraq, an Army veteran, took over as executive director, and then I stepped down. Simultaneous with this, the Forest Service, its international arm, had selected Huts for Vets as the model for the healing program for veterans in Ukraine. I came on then to help mental health workers in Lviv, Ukraine, come up with outdoor-based therapy programs. With the help of Krisha Carter-Getz, videographer and artist, we produced videos that we sent to Ukraine with Ukrainian translations.
Мене звати Пол Андерсен. Я засновник та виконавчий директор організації «Хатинки для ветеранів».
And those were circulated then among these mental health workers to give them a start in their approaching their own programs. Bob Lewis not only introduced my wife and me, Bob ran the Independence Pass Foundation, the IPF, and that led to my first book, which was a field guide to Independence Pass. We called it East of Aspen. And Bob put me together with David Heiser, and for me, a writer, to work with a world-famous photographer like Heiser was a huge step up for me. That was the beginning of my book writing, which moved me into a whole different genre as a writer, and then Kurt Carpenter became part of that as the book designer.
Paul has written and I have designed, I think 15 books in 30 years. We share this fascination with place, and his writing is very much about place. His inspiration, especially his poetry, are observations of life in this valley. Wood skis, Telmark, still dreaming it at 73.
I retired from the Aspen Times as a reporter, but I stayed on as a columnist. And my tenure with the Aspen Times was about 40 years, which I think is the longest term any writer for the Times has had. Then I connected with Curtis Wackerly at Aspen Journalism, which is a non-profit news source in the Valley. And here was an avenue for me to write long-form journalism. So last year I wrote a 10-part series about community, which was a heavy research piece that established the idea of regionalism as the way to identify community today. I've since made that into a book, and it's called In Search of Community. And then this year, I wrote a 4-part piece about Albert Schweitzer. I wanted to serve the community by reflecting on the founding ideals of the spirit of Aspen.
Paul is able to come up with very ambitious projects and set about to get them done. How many people can say they have been a mountain reporter for 50 plus years? Very few. And so that puts him in a very, very special category in my opinion.
In this rural environment in which we live now, at 7 Castles, 5 miles up the Frying Pan, our neighbors are elk and deer and bighorn sheep, and that's what Tate has grown up with. My wife took up painting in the last 7 or 8 years, and these are some of her art forms here that she's painted. Nature, animals, desert scenes. So the natural world comes through in our walls here. Lou and I have been together now for about 35 years. And now Tate is married to Sarah, and they have a baby. I'm a grandfather to Axel Andersen, named for my Danish immigrant grandfather. Having a new baby now in the fold has given us a vision of the future where we have more to give. I just have to credit Lou for her hard work and commitment to her career, and to her commitment, more than that, to our family. Aspen has given a lot to me, and I aspire to live up to the Aspen idea? Can we still maintain our integrity as a community without giving away our identity? And we need to pull together to uphold that ideal and not allow the external world to diminish those values. That's what we need to do now.
The sugar balls.